Shalom, everybody. This is Dave, your host from Universal Truth of Mankind, and this is Future Forecast. Now, my whole purpose for Future Forecast is to give you my opinion on things, my perspective of things. I'm not saying I'm a prophet. I'm not saying that I'm going to be all right or all wrong. What I'm saying is this is the way I see things. And I do have a little bit of as a Kabbalah student, kind of like a unique perspective of the situation. I don't know if you hear that's the rooster. He's agreeing with me again. So take it that way. Okay. Now, the very first video I did, I mentioned about Ukraine, but I didn't cover the subject at all. I just didn't have the time to do it. So I'm going to cover that this time around. We are highly misinformed about what's taking place in the Ukraine. How do I know this? Well, videos, pictures, and so on and so forth that the news likes to put out there are from 10 years ago. It's from scenes, poor bloody situations where civilians are being hurt and so on and so forth. Those are actually Russian citizens of the Ukraine who were being persecuted by the Ukrainians. And yet they turn around and used it. Some of them were even Palestinian photographs that were being used of civilians that they hurt to blame on Israel, and they used it as, oh, here's footage from Ukraine. There's a lot of lying going on. So we had to ask ourselves, why is it such a situation? Well, first of all, we had to understand one thing, and keep this in mind. Go check, like I said, the politicians, even the media, think public's memory is only 6 months long. So when you do your research, you got to go beyond 6 months. Go 3, 4, 5, 10 years back and do your research that way, and then move forward. And then you'll see what takes place. Like I said, I don't listen to CNN. I don't listen to the news at all, any of them. Not even Fox News. I don't listen to any of them. And I can look back and then look forward, and I can see where they're playing games with us. So Russia invaded Ukraine. We know this. Why? Did they want the Ukraine defeated? Well, let's take a look at some of the evidence and see what conclusions we can come to. Russia went in, and they went into 4 specific areas. Don't ask me what they were. I know one of them is called Donbass, I think it is, or Donbass, I believe it's called. Those are areas that had Russian civilians in it. They went in there to protect them from the Ukrainians' terroristic activities against them. Once they got in there, they asked those Ukrainian citizens who were Russian in these provinces, and anyone who was Russian, to come to the provinces. Do you want us to protect you? Do you want us here? Do you want to succeed from the Ukraine? All 4 said yes. So Russia stayed in those 4 areas. The Ukrainians had no chance to push back the Russians. No chance at all. They're there. Wonderful. Now, granted, there were some, once they got in there were some offensive activities by the Russians. But I can explain to you what they were doing and why. Well, first, we have to have a little bit of a history lesson. If we go back about 100 years, we know that the Ukrainians were part of the revolution, the Russian Revolution, the Communist Revolution, the Reds against the Whites. Now, the Communists won, as we know. The Ukrainians did not like that. The Ukrainians resisted the communist takeover. So the communists decided for Ukraine to treat them specially, in a special way. And this is what they did. They went down to Ukraine because they were the breadbasket of the Eurasian area. And they took all the grain, all the food away from the farmers. If they didn't give them all the food, they were shot, they were killed, they were slaughtered, they were tortured. Once they handed over all the food, the key word all, they had nothing to eat. The Ukrainians were starved to death. Men, women, and children starved to death by the millions. Something in history we forget. When Operation Barbarossa started, where the Germans decided to invade Eastern Poland and went straight into Russia. That's Operation Barbarossa. They went in, they got themselves into the Ukraine. They did horrible things, don't get me wrong. They also starved people to death. They didn't feed their POWs. They didn't give them water. So within 3-4 days, within a week, their population was reduced. Auschwitz, we all heard of Auschwitz. Auschwitz was originally a POW camp for Russian prisoners. They had a special way of dealing with Russian prisoners back then. In Auschwitz, before it was made as a concentration camp or a death place for the Jews, and also homosexuals, gypsies, communists, and so on and so forth, which was part of the hate list that they had. They starved the Russian soldiers to death. That was their way of handling everything. Give them no food and let them die. It got so bad that Russian soldiers were afraid to go to sleep because they were afraid they wouldn't wake up the next morning because somebody would steal their liver, literally cut their liver out to kill them and eat their liver just to survive. That's how awful it was. The same situation that, what was her name? Oh, shoots. What's her name? Very famous girl. Dutch, I think she was. Taken. Anne Frank. Anne Frank starved to death. People don't realize that. But there's a lot of liver stealing in that particular situation, unfortunately. It's horrible, horrible stuff. But that's what the Ukrainians were faced with from the Russians. So what they decided to do was join the Germans. And the Germans formed SS units. They formed army units out of the Ukrainians. In fact, the Ukrainians even helped in the destruction of the Jewish population in Europe. They were involved with the concentration camps. In fact, the concentration camps were less German than we think. They were more other people's. So Ukraine ended up becoming a supporter of the Germans, and the Germans gave them equipment, including captured Russian equipment, and they became an army force for the Germans. Now, how does this play into this? Well, let's step forward. And it's been in the news in the past that the Ukraine area was used to develop bioweapons. So when the Russians decided to invade, they knew they had to kill the possibility of the Ukrainians creating bioweapons, nuclear weapons, whatever, to be used against them. So they had to go into some offensive weapons to destroy their plants. And that's what they did. They destroyed that. And then they retreated back. Of course, it was turned into, oh, look, the Ukrainians are succeeding. They're shooting down their planes. They're pushing them back, even though one of those videos was fake. It was from a video game. So the Russians went in, grabbed what they had to do, prevent the Ukrainians from creating a nuclear war and creating a biological warfare and nerve gas warfare and all that. And then they moved back. And then they said, oh, look, Ukrainians are great. Hey, Congress, US Congress, give us money so we keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting. It was a money laundering operation on our end. It's just what it was. Now let's step back again. So we know that the Germans lost World War II, but they weren't defeated. The armies were defeated. The government was defeated, but not the secret part of Germany. The secret part of Germany was absorbed by us. Right about the time when they had the Operation Paperclip, which had a lot of people on it, but also the CIA was created, Central Intelligence Agency. Central Intelligence became the operative for intelligence throughout the world. What would be the quickest thing? What would be the most important thing for us? Surveillance of Russia and the USSR. So how did they establish this network? Think about it for a moment. The Ukrainians favored the Germans. At the end of the war, the Germans had a lot of technology, rocket technology and other technologies that some of it still hasn't been revealed, what's been done with that technology. The Third Army, run by Patton, when the Russians decided to put all the forces into taking Berlin, Patton went south, below Berlin, all the way over to the Bavarian areas and into the secret vaults, the secret tunnels, the secret technologies of the Nazis. And they took the technology per agreement with the Germans, and they took it all back. That was both England and the United States participated in this. And they took all that technology and the specialists, and the commanders, the SS commanders, and so on and so forth. And they moved them all out. And while they did that, the US government agreed with the Germans. That's why a lot of the German SS disappeared, never to be found. They handed over the Ukrainians as an intelligence network for the CIA to keep eyes on the Russians. So the CIA is heavily embedded in the Ukraine. Something happened, about a year ago. I think it's actually less than a year ago, but let's just say a year. Did not ISIS try to attack the Russians directly in Russia? What would the Ukrainians have to do with the ISIS group? They train the ISIS. They are the ISIS. They're a terrorist organization, meaning the Ukrainians. They developed these organizations. ISIS is a product of the Ukraine. A lot of the terrorist organizations around the world are trained and are based and come from the Ukraine, where the CIA has operatives there. You wonder why the Russians wanted to make sure that they can stop them? Think about that. So that's where the Ukraine falls into this picture. Right now, the Ukraine's slowly being destroyed, meaning its capability is gone. They keep trying to fight the Russians, trying to egg them on. Come on, fight me, fight me, fight me. Oh, yeah. Seen it where they said, we have a Bradley tank. We took out one of their new tanks, the T-10s. T-10s, is it? T-12, T-10, whatever, their new tank. Like, look, we destroyed a tank. No, they didn't. They knocked out their sensors. The tank was taken back and repaired. That's not a dead tank. They didn't kill any of the crew member. That's not a dead tank. That tank was put back into service by the Russians. The Ukrainians gained nothing. It was a tactical win, but a strategic loss. So that's the issue with the Ukrainians. They are, and that's why they have the, the Nazi emblem and stuff like that, because they liked the Nazis. They also hated the Jews. So that's why a lot of Ukrainian Jews lost their lives to them. They had no problem carrying out Hitler's orders. I thought you would like to know that. Do your own research on this, and you see how this picture comes together and develops. We've been told a whole host of lies, people. Know your history. Take care. Shalom, shalom.